Guys, I have like one thing to say every episode. You gotta let me say the thing. Hello, and welcome back to Unleash the Goats, where we unleash ourselves upon the Star Wars franchise with reckless abandon, and nobody quite knows what we'll say next. Wow, well done me.
Would you like to start all over?
Nope. Nobody quite knows what we'll say next, least of all us. I'm not she, her. My brain is fully functional today. Sugar, say hi.
Hi, Sugar, she, her.
Angela, say hi.
Hi, I'm Angela /Faye, she, her.
That was the wrong order. Let's talk about the clones, y'all.
You switch up the order like with some.
I was going to say, you've done that to us intentionally before, so.
Yeah.
Several times.
Yeah.
All right, we are talking about the clones today. Just sort of how they began and how they've evolved over the almost 50 years that this franchise has existed.
You're
crazy.
So,
you're lying.
Yeah. No, next year is the 50th anniversary.
True. That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, no, they're re-releasing the actual original theatrical version of A New Hope in theaters next year.
That's exciting.
I will be seated.
Yeah, you get to go see Han shoot first for the first time in like 30 years.
That's
and it'll be like the one and only time you get to go see it.
Oh my god. That's very exciting.
Setting that aside, though, because it is not clone related.
But just so everybody knows who's listening, because if you're listening to this, you probably do care. Next year. Indeed.
Next year. Keep an eye out. Disney's announced it, but obviously tickets are not on sale. Although, who knows? D23, I think, is coming up soon, so we might get some more information at D23 about it.
That's crazy.
But speaking of A New Hope, that is, for obvious reasons, where our first mention of the Clone War ever happened. However, there's zero explanation about what it was or who the clones were. Who were they clones of? You never know. Who are their clones fighting against? You don't know. There was a clone war, presumably clones were in it, and it happened a long time ago. So obviously a lot of assumptions had to be made about the clones within the sort of Legends era after the original trilogy, but before the prequel trilogy. Personally, I only really know of one place that really discussed it, and that was within the Thrawn trilogy. Faye, if you know of other shit within the Legends that kind of addressed the Clone War itself, and, like, who the clones were and who they were clones of and all of that, feel free to chime in. But within the Thrawn trilogy, he decides to posit that they were clones of Jedi, for the most part. But it was, like, many different people who were cloned, as opposed to one person turned into a vast army, which is obviously what it ends up being.
Yeah, a lot of other Legends stuff kind of went into like it didn't always stay as like Jedi clones.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the times it was like volunteers or like random people or whatever. It usually was not like one guy. It was usually like copies of random people, and that kind of bled over a little bit even after the prequels. It's like it tended to be the clones were initially clones of Jango, and then as like they got retired out, they were replaced with clones of other random people.
Retired out, do you mean as in retired out, like, after the Empire came into power, or retired out?
Yes, so, like, post-Empire, leading into Stormtroopers, it was, like, a transition. The transition period was, like, kind of held over with clones of, like, other random people, whatever. And then that kind of got phased out, and now it's more, like, you know, into Disney era. But, like...
what you would have assumed the Stormtroopers were to begin with, which is just recruits.
Mm-hmm. There was a lot of early clone stuff in the Legends,
yes.
Thrawn trilogy especially, but a lot of that stuff was like playing with clones. And there's like one where there's a clone of Palpatine who like comes back.
There still are.
Yeah, well, this clone like of Palpatine can't use the Force, so you know.
Some of the other new ones can't either.
Well, that's where they got it. It was early Legends
yes.
shit. That's where they're pulling from. But like a lot of it was like, oh well, he was cloning to like test this out so he could have immortality, and like the clone army was just like his rejects essentially, or like his practice runs, that kind of thing. There was a lot of that in Legends, like various materials.
Yeah, and I mean, from what I can tell, I did, for context, most people who've listened to this probably know this already, I don't read Legends very much. I didn't as a kid, I still don't. But I did a teeny little bit of research for this, which kind of let me know that, like, even aside from the clone army itself and exploration of what the clones in the Clone War were, like, the idea of cloning kind of happened a lot in Legends, just kind of randomly, like, on its own, as just, like, a thematic, like, fun action-adventure thing, which is just interesting, because I don't feel like we get that as much these days, of just, like, using cloning as a fun narrative device, whereas Legends, I think, liked playing with that in a lot of different ways.
There's also like an interesting thing where like early clones were not seen as people. Like they were just basically flesh droids. Like
Ew.
they had downloaded programming. Like they were people.
Oh,
They're like
yeah,
were bodies,
see-
but like they don't have personalities. They're just like droids essentially.
You can
with
tell which of the three of us hasn't
parts.
read a lot of Clone Wars fan fiction. Because the term flesh droid gets used a lot.
I really don't like the
in
word
fan
flesh
fiction.
in general.
Yeah,
I'm so
I
sorry.
understand. It is
So-
a thing that gets used a lot in Clone Wars. I don't know
Makes
where...
sense.
I don't know that it's actually used in the show itself, but within fan fiction, the concept of flesh droid is a thing that comes up a lot.
That makes
Mhm.
sense.
But the other thing that Thrawn Trilogy... I was kind of just writing down all the differences in the Thrawn Trilogy. The other thing that they have is that the clones seem to see themselves as if they are the original person, not as their own new individual people with their own personalities. And they have
Yeah.
memories of the original person in order to kind of back that up a little bit. Whereas obviously later on, the clones are treated more as akin to an offspring, where like, yes, they're technically genetically the same in terms of their appearance and physicality, but that they each have their own minds and personalities.
What do you mean? Twins are the exact same and therefore have the exact same person.
Right, yes, it's treated more similar to twins as well.
Yeah.
The clones seem to have ultimately gone mad later on in life, and so they become very dangerous, which seems to have led to the idea that apparently was also very popular within Legends, which is that the clone war was a fight against clones, as in like the Jedi are fighting the clones and not fighting with clones, seems to be how Legends interpreted the Clone War.
Yeah,
for a
because
long
there wasn't
time.
a lot of information on it. You literally have like
Yeah,
one
nothing.
line from Obi-Wan being like, yeah, I fought in the Clone Wars, and that's all you get.
Yeah, all you know is that a Clone War happened. Jedi were involved in it because Obi-Wan was involved in it, and because it is named Clone War, clones are involved. That's all you know. And so there's all these very interesting assumptions about who the clones were, where they came from, and what they were like, that got radically changed later on. Almost all of it ended up being wrong. Also, the thing that is more relevant now is that clones seemed, at least within the Thrawn trilogy, clones were easily force sensitive, actually, and any force sensitive person who got cloned seems to have been able to just pass those abilities onto the clone without a lot of effort.
Mhm.
And as anyone who knows the Disney era of Star Wars particularly well can tell you, that has been completely obliterated, and the concept of being able to attach force sensitivity to a clone has been a major kind of subplot throughout several different pieces of media these days. So anyway, that's kind of how Legends.
In fairness to Disney,
Okay.
that did happen in Legends as well. There's multiple clone stories, and some clone stories they have force sensitivity, and some of them they don't. It really just
You
depends
mentioned
on who's
earlier
writing
that
it.
there was
Yeah.
another clone of Palpatine that didn't have it,
Mhm.
but like clearly, like with Caboth, however the fuck you're supposed to pronounce the guy's name in
Goes down.
Clone Wars, like clearly the idea of just making clones of Jedi so that you have multiple Jedi replacements was like how the Thrawn trilogy treats the clone thing.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yes?
Sorry. Is force sensitivity usually, like, do we have evidence that it's genetic in general?
Well,
I know that Jedi
yes
don't
and-
typically have children.
Well, aside from like Anakin having force
I was going to say
sensitive
yes and
children.
no.
Other
in the
than
sense
the
that you're
one
obvious.
time.
Well, and also Rey, right? That Rey theoretically got it genetically through Palpatine's clone, although
That's true.
Palpatine's clone was not force sensitive. But...
Okay, other than the very main
Which-
characters that
that
I
is
forgot about
fascinating.
again.
So
Right,
the
yeah.
clone doesn't have force sensitivity, but their children get the force
Good.
sensitivity.
Which, to be fair, like, that could just be the basic randomness that causes force sensitivity everywhere, but, like, she also has the lightning thing that comes
She
out
has
of
the
her,
lightning.
which is
Yeah.
associated mostly with Palpatine, although it can be taught because you see Dooku use it just fine, so...
Rey has
It's
the
one of those things
lightning?
where it's like they did not think this through. Like it's an interesting concept, but I'm betting so much money that they did not actually think about it.
Oh,
They
yeah, of
just-
course. Sorry,
yeah.
Nat, did you have a question about Rey using lightning?
No, I don't. I decided it's none of my business. We can move on.
Oh, yeah, she uses it to kill Chewie, but then she doesn't kill Chewie.
Okay, we don't have time for that.
We don't... You know what? I think I have a Rey episode later this year. You'll get to that.
Okay.
So there appears to have been actually relatively little discussion of the Clone War itself in Legends, but that there was that heavy implication that the clones in question fought against the Jedi and Republic as opposed to for them. And I have this quote from somebody, it's not like someone within the production, but someone else's, where they are claiming that like early treatments and promo materials for Empire Strikes Back stated that Boba and the Mandalorians were enemy combatants against the Jedi in the Clone Wars. Lando was apparently initially described as a clone and a veteran of the conflict in Lee Brackett's script for Empire Strikes Back. And at one point, the Mandalorians, or Boba Fett alone at that point, became the Imperial Super Commandos, and then that whole plot element got discarded eventually at the end. And apparently, as a result of, I guess, all of that weirdness, there were people who did suspect that Boba was a clone, especially because the promotional material for Empire Strikes Back mentioned his people's opposition to the Jedi in the war. And so because, like, the clones were often assumed to have been the bad guys in the Clone War, that whole thing about Boba and the Mandalorians having been opposition to the Jedi kind of people latched onto that and connected things. Obviously, like, the clones being the bad guys is kind of a wishy-washy thing at this point, but that being said, there was a connection apparently between Boba and the clones that some fans did make prior to that being confirmed. And that's kind of all I know about clones in Legends, unless there's anything else, Faye, that you wanted to bring up.
No, yeah, we touched on all the things that I remember about clones. I mean, they're interesting and stuff, and they do fun things with them, but they're very, very different than what we get in the Clone Wars.
Yeah, people are just having to make assumptions left and right.
Yeah, pretty much. There's like, the lore is all over the place. Everyone's doing their own thing. It's the Wild West.
Yes, for sure. The Clone Wild West. Which leads us into, obviously, I put in the prequels era, so this is pre-Clone Wars show, but after the prequels trilogy.
So before 2008, but after 98. So there's like a 10-year gap there. Where we have
arguably after 2002, because there's no clone shit in Phantom Menace, so from Attack of the Clones until the Clone War movie comes out, so it's actually a 6-year gap.
And then there's the Clone Wars show, which comes out after Attack of the Clones.
Exactly. So from Attack of the Clones for about 6 years, there's
the superior Clone Wars show. Everyone go watch Clone Wars 2003.
I forgot about Clone Wars 2003. That's the one where Anakin eats bugs.
Yes!
It is the one where Anakin eats bugs. That is where that came from.
It's very funny.
Everything that I know about the clones comes from just the prequels. I know nothing else.
For the most part, and Clone Wars. You got a good amount of Clone Wars stuff in there.
I have seen some of Clone Wars.
You've also heard us talk about it enough that I think you've absorbed a certain amount.
That is a good point. You got me there.
It's lingering there in the base layer.
It's somewhere.
Right in the, yeah. So the new knowledge that you get from the prequels is that it obviously is an army of one man's clones, Jango Fett, and it does confirm Boba Fett as a clone. We also hear that cloning was illegal in the Republic because it seems to be considered immoral due to a lack of clarity about whether clones are sentient and their status as products to be created, because they aren't like born normally. You have to make them. And so I called them offspring earlier, but obviously their status as official offspring is also in question here. The clones now have their own individual identities. Even within the prequels show, Cody and Oddball are both referred to by name in Revenge of the Sith. The clones do not seem to be mentally unstable at all. They seem pretty fine, right up until they obviously turn around at Order 66, but there isn't this the thing that happens in the Thrawn trilogy where they are like falling apart and becoming like mad.
But interestingly, they are not like fully formed people either. Like there's no chip happening in the prequels movies at all. Like the clones turn on a dime the second they're ordered to. They are 100% loyal to whoever is giving them orders. Yeah. Doesn't matter what they think about you, how much you liked them before. If they're told to kill you, they'll do it. Like they're not quite droids. They still have, like, more personality than that. But they are not fully independent people either.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. So there is this weirdness where Lucas clearly chose not to explain it all that much. There's, like, one line from, I think it's Lama Su, like the Prime Minister of Kamino, who's talking to Obi-Wan about it. And he has a line that says something along the lines of, like, they're more they needed to be more creative than droids in order to enact battle strategies that would defeat droids, but obedient enough that that they would still be worthwhile soldiers. And so they mention that they've kind of done something to bioengineer obedience into the clones, and that is kind of your one argument, or your one piece of evidence as to what causes them to turn on the Jedi, is that like basically they just follow orders no matter what. It doesn't matter who's given them, or I mean to be fair, they think Palpatine is the Chancellor of the Republic, right? So like he is, their superior officer, so their superior officer gives them an order and they do it. It doesn't really matter to them.
I saw a funny post about this the other day. It was somebody referencing the Revenge of the Sith novelization by Matthew Stoker, and there's a line in it where Cody gets the Order 66, and he gets like an eternal narration for him, and he's like, "Man, I wish I'd gotten that order before I gave his lightsaber back."
Yeah. Not that it matters. He's like 300 feet away at that point, and he, on a cliff, and he just shoots the cliff. But like,
no, yeah, but it was still like, it's a funny thing where he's like, okay, so this guy like doesn't give a fuck.
yeah, there is a very interesting relationship there between the Jedi and the clones, where it seems friendly, but also you get this hint that the clones can't care a lot.
I don't think that we see any other evidence until, and maybe I'm wrong, but until we get Order 66, like, we don't really see a lot in the prequels of them actually fighting with the clones, so we don't see them getting conflicting orders ever until that moment.
There's not a lot of moments where you see them.
Yeah, no. Like, there's certainly space to expand on why they turn on them.
I mean, Yoda doesn't seem... The Jedi don't have, like, strong relationships either. Like, Yoda kills those clones instantly. The second he feels them turn on them, he chops their heads off. Like, no hesitation.
I mean, in fairness, they are about to kill him. There's a self-defense thing happening.
Yeah, for sure. He did the right thing, but, like, unlike, Ahsoka, who's, like, holding herself back, like, in tears because she can't shoot Rex, like, these are presumably the same clones that, like, he's been working with for a while. And, like, this is not framed as, like, an emotional thing for him. Like, these aren't people that he's killing, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like, when they shot this.
That's an interesting interpretation of that. I don't know that I got that he had been working with them for a while, because he mentions that he's just going to kind of show up to Kashyyyk to, like, back them up. And so it's hard to tell if these are, like, his personal battalion, or if he's just, like...
it was his battalion that he took to Kashyyyk to back them up.
Canonically, it's not.
Okay.
Canonically, I think it's Luminara's battalion. And he's just basically there as backup. That's like one of them is supposed to be Gree, Commander Gree, who you do see in the Clone Wars TV show, is her primary commander.
So they're in green armor, so I don't recognize them.
But yeah, no, I think the idea is that he actually just is like going and like providing more support and backup, and just like because he has the connection with the Wookiees, so he's just helping manage that relationship a little bit, rather than that these are his personal battalion. I don't know that Yoda is ever given a personal battalion, because he doesn't go on the field all that much. He's so old. They don't really ask that of him, but you're not wrong that there is like an element of him reacting very quickly, but it is also like as he's in the middle of feeling a bunch of Jedi die too. I think there is kind of like a instinctive reaction happening to just kind of protect himself in the middle of what would be something very difficult mentally. But yes, it is very different than the way they treat it later with Ahsoka and the 332nd, I never remember. The battalion that's with her on the ship at the end of Clone Wars, where she is, although to be fair, Ahsoka also releases Maul on them, so it's not like she's, all that kind.
Yes, but there's
but
a
I
level
understand
of...
the narrative is treating it different.
Yeah, there's a level, like, she's trying to be as disconnected from that as possible, it seems.
Yes.
And
she's not immediately turning on them. Although Obi-Wan does not. Like, even as he's trying to escape Utapau, we never see him actually kill a clone until he gets back to the temple and he's trying to get in the temple. Which, again, at that point, they don't know, Yoda and Obi-Wan don't know if there are survivors in the temple, that they are trying to defend, and these clones have now betrayed them and turned on them. They are now enemies. But yes, there is a level of distance, to some degree, between the Jedi and the clones, even though they seem generally friendly, at least within Obi-Wan's relationships too. but also some of that could come from the fact that George Lucas was treating them to some degree like proto stormtroopers. That was kind of their purpose. Like he intentionally designs the armor and styles them to look like stormtroopers in order to lead into that betrayal. Um, and the implication here is obviously that the clone troopers kind of became stormtroopers after Order 66, even though it's left unclear at the point within the prequels, like by the end of Revenge of the Sith, whether stormtroopers in the original trilogy are all still clones or not, although obviously a lot of them no longer sound like Tamara Morrison. Um,
Also, they're, different heights and stuff.
yeah, you see that there's a difference between them, but there isn't technically an explanation yet as to whether the clones stayed on, and if not, why not? What happened to them? Um, but yeah, there, as you mentioned, there's a lack of clarity and agreement about Order 66 and the relationship that they have with the Jedi, which leads to a lot of, again, Legends authors now kind of having to tend towards one of two explanations. The first one is that the clones turn on the Jedi intentionally because they don't like the Jedi, or they blame the Jedi for their situation, and the Jedi in these stories are sometimes represented as cruel and uncaring slave masters. And option two is the one that is, as Faye was mentioning, a little bit more accurate to canon, which is that the clones are simply just not sentient enough to recognize the immorality, regardless of how friendly they might have been prior. Um, Interestingly enough, I have not seen any evidence of anyone choosing to go for an option where the clones are just inherently evil bastards. Um, like either the Jedi are the problem or the clones just can't physically care enough, and there isn't like a no, the clones are just kind of evil at heart and they were just hiding it until they didn't have to. Like there is none of that, which is I thought
mean,
was interesting.
I think that's part of that is that, like, Jedi are fucking force sensitive. And so, like, if the clones were inherently evil, they could probably sense it.
You'd
I
think
mean, they're
so, but they
around them
don't
all the
sense
time.
Palpatine. But
So, I mean, yeah, but they're not around Palpatine 24/7. So,
true.
if I think that kind of stems from not wanting the super cool laser Jedi people to be 100% stupid.
True, but they seem fine with making them 100% evil by turning them into like cruel slave masters.
It's different to have, like, a percentage of them be obnoxious and evil than it is to have them, their cool force powers not work.
Not work as well.
Yeah.
That's fair. But yeah, those seem to be the two most obvious options that I've seen the most. Again, I didn't like engage a lot with this content as a kid. I still have not, but these are the two that I have seen. Personally, I think we've kind of said already, like, I think that the option two, where they just aren't sentient enough to recognize the immorality of turning on the Jedi, is the more accurate of the two. Obviously, we're all pretty pro Jedi in here, so none of us take the tack of like, nah, yeah, the Jedi just were cruel and awful people, and that's why the clones turned on them.
Because it
As a,
doesn't make sense with any other tiny scrap of canon that exists ever.
of course, and it doesn't make sense with like Clone Wars either these days. But
I'm always of the opinion that, like, in that particular era where you don't have chips and they don't have personalities, that, like, them just being, like, independent thinkers, but to their bones loyal to orders no matter what, like, I think that just makes the most sense for the situation at hand.
yeah, I do think. Oh, I did put the quote from Attack of the Clones here. That's my bad. So Lama Su says, "We modified the clones' genetic structure to make them less independent than the original host, aka Jango Fett. As a result, they are totally obedient, taking any order without question."
Mm-hmm.
So this is the defining quality of the clones that allows Order 66 to happen. Is it like it's not even just like they're loyal to their bones, it's like they are loyal to their in their genetics. Like they have been genetically modified to be able to do this. Um, and then I've seen people try to claim that this quote maybe could be assumed to be referring to the chips, but like if that's true, I don't know why Lama Su would reveal that information to a Jedi. Why not keep that a secret, since Clone Wars implies that it's intended to be one? And like the Kaminoans get really worried when it seems like, the Jedi are close to discovering the chips at all.
I mean, you could
So
argue that them discovering the chips and the physical chips that have, like, the physical readout of the orders on them would be concerning, but there's also, like, some material that says that they provided the list of orders to the Senate in the documentation for the clones. So, it's all a lot of, like, very conflicting shit, because, I mean, in fairness, not all the orders refer to the Jedi themselves. Like, Order 65 says to kill the Chancellor.
Yeah, according to whatever information this came from, which is presumably not canon.
That's
But
crazy.
but yes, that would be an obvious way to sort of hide
I
this
could
stuff. I've also seen people go the other direction of like, no, nobody knows what these orders are until the chips get activated.
I also could see the argument that they would like saying, "Oh, we modified their genetic structure," is kind of a way to like skirt around the actual details of how they did that. And I could see an argument of like, well, they want to be the only ones providing the clones, and so if you find the chip, I haven't seen Clone Wars or like the show, so I don't know their deal with the chips and how much they're hiding from them. But I could see like, oh yeah, we did this, and not explaining how in an attempt to be like, no, we want to be your only provider of these. If you find the chips, you can take them somewhere else. A different company can build the clones for you. This is our product. We have to be the only ones supplying it. But I don't know if that holds
Yeah.
up with Clone Wars
The
content.
issue I think that people have there, the reason people are trying to connect it is because the clones obviously have not actually been genetically modified to be less independent than Jango, as per Clone Wars. Like in Clone
I
Wars,
see.
they're pretty independent.
Yeah.
Because if they were like that, then they would be boring, and they need the characters to have
Yeah,
personalities in order to have a TV show, so they can't
right,
just be flesh droids.
right. Yeah, they can't be like that, and so like people are coming back and looking at this quote and going, "This is clearly the explanation as per the prequels." But how do you connect that to the new canon of the biochips? And that, I think your explanation is as good as any. Um, the last thing I think that I wanted to start to touch on is the concept of clones and the connection to the Mandalorians. We kind of obliquely discussed it a little bit in Legends, that there was this maybe possible original concept of bringing Mandalorians in alongside Boba Fett as an opposition thing in Empire Strikes Back that ended up getting scrapped. Obviously, Boba Fett and the concept of the Mandalorians continued to get explored more in Legends, although no longer connected to the concept of the clone army or the clone wars. Um, so then in the prequels era, again, pre-Clone Wars at this point, this connection between the clones and the Mandalorians becomes a little fuzzy, and a little bit complicated in some ways, because as per the films, um, there's no real discussion of it. Like, Django is not explicitly not a Mandalorian, but he's also not explicitly a Mandalorian. They don't really tell you as such either way. Um, but like, that's just not something that they discuss when we see these characters in Attack of the Clones. Um, and then you hit the Karen Traviss problem. If you don't know who Karen Traviss is, she is an
You're
author
so
who...
lucky.
That's
You're so
me.
lucky. Nat
Ruin
is
my
super
life.
lucky. So, Karen Traviss is an author who wrote several official Star Wars novels exploring and expanding Mandalorian culture via the clones. She might have been the first, but if not, then she was one of the first to write a story with clones as the main characters, as opposed to just some side characters with, Jedi as the main characters. And most of what's associated with Mandalorian culture today comes from her work. Things like the Mandoa Conlang, the concept of Beskar and its ability to repel lightsabers, the kind of association with warrior culture in general, maybe, at least the like really central version of that. Travis is arguably taking a lot from Polynesian and specifically Maori culture to flesh out Mandalorian culture, most notably the concept of a Keldabe, which seems to be based pretty explicitly on the Maori Hongi, which I'm sure pronouncing pretty incorrectly. I'm very sorry to the Maori people in the audience if we have anyone. There are other Polynesian versions of this. I think they have similar but slightly different words for it. I'm focusing on the Maori one because she obviously is looking at Tamara Morrison's culture for this. But it doesn't appear to have been done particularly respectfully or accurately, and it often falls into a little bit of a martial race trope, which obviously is a little bit of a problem. Travis also seems to have based some of her Mando culture on Celtic culture. I don't have any good citations for this, though.
The sorry, I had to Google the Keldabe. How do you say it?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the forehead touch.
yeah.
Did she write
It's
before? Because
I
we
don't believe
see.
she wrote before Attack of the Clones, because
Thank
a
you.
lot of her work is specifically related to the clones, so she couldn't have written. Like, she bases it on the version of the clones that we know from Attack of the Clones, the Jango Fett clones.
And we see Boba do that with Django.
Yeah,
We see
he
him
does.
do it with
So
the
she
helmet.
so she
Yes.
fleshes it out like a little bit more, but that wasn't necessarily the first time we saw that,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, obviously, theoretically, and obviously, both Tamara Morrison and Daniel Logan, who are the actors of Boba and Jango in that film, are Maori actors, and so they might have been intentionally bringing their culture into that particular moment, and Travis fleshes that out, but without the understanding of what that gesture means within that culture necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Thank
the
you.
moment in the movie happens first, and then she writes about it, but she doesn't.
Yeah, but
know
she
what
doesn't
she's
know what
about.
she's talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, she
The
turns
way
it,
that
as
Morrison
far as
does.
I'm aware, it's considered basically like Mandos don't remove their helmets very much, if at all, once they become adults, and so this is the way that they quote unquote kiss. Um, is the Keldabe. Like, this is the closest you get to the concept of a kiss. Whereas the
Okay.
Maori Hongi, to my understanding, is more about your connection. It's about breath more than it is about the skin to skin contact.
Oh,
It's about
interesting.
sharing breath, I believe, is a big part of it. So you're actually supposed to be close enough that like you kind of inhale a little bit when you do the hongi. And so it's
Oh
about
my god, him
sharing
doing it
breath
with his
and
father's head, who's no longer breathing, is so fucking sad.
okay, it's not his head, it's just the helmet. The head isn't in it anymore.
Okay, still.
Still.
But
It's
yes,
conceptually his head.
it well, to be fair, he could have picked up the head. The head is probably not that far away, but he picks up the helmet instead because Star Wars does not show severed heads on
Just severed arms.
screen. Just severed arms. That bit's okay. A severed head, I guess they decided was too. But yes, there is. If you slow down the moment just enough, you can see. There's a shot where you see the shadow of Jango's head go flying after it's decapitated. You can see the separation of head from helmet.
I've seen that
But you
screenshot
have,
before. Yep.
yeah, I think I've shown it to you because I was like, everyone says that it's the head in there, but there isn't actually a head in there.
There is no blood dripping. Although, no, it's a lightsaber. It would have cauterized anyway.
It would have cauterized, but yeah, the head is not still in that helmet. It's not a severed head that he is connecting himself to. It's just the helmet. But anyway, like, I'm sure I'm not giving any level of justice to what the Maori Hongi actually is, but that is some of my understanding of it, and that doesn't appear to have been included in Karen Travis's version.
In fairness to Karen Travis, her version is pretty cool. Like, if you're just coming into like if you're coming into it looking for like some cool badass warriors who have like an interesting culture, she doesn't do a bad job of that. Like, stealing from other cultures aside, that part does suck. It is conceptually an interesting people, and she is creating something that caught on for a reason. People liked it for a reason because it was interesting and it was cool. Yeah.
There's a lot of world building around their culture that people have latched onto, and that is continuing into some of the Disney era.
And she played with a lot of like really interesting concepts, and she did a lot of stuff that was kind of badass and like problematic for a lot of things. Absolutely.
We'll continue
but we have
into
to say
her
that
problems,
like
but
it's not, people didn't latch onto it because it was the only thing. People did latch onto it because there was interesting stuff happening there, and we do have to acknowledge that like the guys in armor fucking around and like tapping their helmets together to kiss is kind of cool. The fact that she stole it from a bunch of cultures sucks because she's an idiot.
Yeah, well, and specifically from Maori, that she decided it would seem reasonable to start inserting Tamara Morrison and Daniel Logan's culture into her world building of Mandalorian culture without necessarily doing as much research as it would have been. I mean, I don't know how much research it would have been possible to do for her back in 2000, but
she could have called Tamara Morrison and been like, hey,
what are your thoughts?
Tried to see if Lucasfilm could put them in contact. But like I said, someone claimed that there's also some elements of Celtic culture in there, but I do have a missing citation here. I don't have any evidence about what she may have included out of Celtic culture and if that's even true. The last thing I put in here is that the main character of her books, who seems to be Cal Scarata, is a white savior who approves of Order 66 getting rid of the Jedi and all of the clones. Getting rid of the Jedi and the clones, who are obviously all brown, tend to look up to him and see him as a father. So there's some fun, weird aspects happening there.
Hate that.
But Travis is also equally as known for being virulently anti-Jedi. And her writing of the clones and the Mandalorians does reflect this. So the Jedi are often entirely incompetent, and they're definitely considered basically slave owners who don't care about the clones or the moral implications of the clone army, except for, like, her specific OC, who ends up married to one of the clones or something like that, and leaves the order.
Okay.
So there's a lack of nuance in her take on the situation, and her writing of both sides ends up feeling very hypocritical and contradictory at best, and actively racist and sexist at worst. She ended up quitting writing for Star Wars entirely after Clone Wars came out, and their version of the Mandalorians got written into a current-day pacifist culture. And there is a whole other discussion we can have about what happened when she quit Star Wars, and her treatment of fans and the way that she reacted to this, because it was apparently pretty bad. That's not really important at this point. However, while she no longer writes for Star Wars, as Faye said, a lot of fans still like her books, and a lot of Mandalorian culture and current day media does continue to reflect the world building and use the world building she created. Mandoa is still showing up in things like The Mandalorian and Rebels. It was even in Clone Wars, for all that she was pissed off that at their representation, a certain amount of her work was still being used. And it's becoming obviously increasingly more mainstream. The Mandalorian is a huge thing, and people are getting to see a lot of the work she put in become really, really popular and really well known, even beyond the fandom. So, but she continues to have a presence within the franchise and an impact on how fans view the Jedi, the Mandos, and the clone. Which leads us now finally into the Clone Wars, season 1 through 6 era. Season 7 happened in the Disney era.
They get to be people now. It's so exciting. They have to have personalities.
Even more confirmation of that.
They have arguments. They have loyalty disputes. They have all sorts of problems. They have names. Ugh, crazy. They try to leave. They're disloyal.
Well, they had names the first time. Remember, they have Cody and Oddball.
Well, now they all have names instead of just numbers.
Yes.
So that's exciting. Very
they
thrilling.
They have love interests.
They have love interests. They
that's definitely canon, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think a couple of them run away.
There's a few.
Yeah, some of them run away. It's like a whole thing. And that's when they have to introduce the chips, because they're like, oh, yeah, they're people now. And people don't just turn on a dime and kill people that they were friends with 5 minutes ago. So we do have to fix that. And that's when they introduce chips as a concept, being like, actually, there's a thing in their brain that forces them to follow orders.
Yeah, they had to go for the mind control thing. What's interesting about the biochips, though, that this was not, it does not appear to have been a thing that they had in mind from the beginning of Clone Wars. This appears to have been a thing that they came up with later. Mm-hmm. Because towards the beginning, Nat, I don't remember if you've seen these episodes, or this episode, but there's an episode where Cody and Rex discover that there is a traitor in their midst who's been selling them out to the Separatists, the Ventress specifically, but the Separatists in general. And Cody and Rex have to basically go around and do a little bit of like a sort of a whodunit, find the criminal in their ranks, sort of mini adventure, and they find a clone who has agreed to sell them out. And when asked why he does so, his explanation essentially amounts to the old Legends explanation of the Jedi are slave owners and I'm taking a strike against the Republic for all clones. Like, he very specifically does use the word like enslaved or slavery or something within that line. Like, the word slave is in there. And it's the one and only time that we ever hear the word slave attached to the clone. It does come from someone who is an unreliable narrator, because obviously he's sitting there going, I took a strike for all clones, right after he is revealed to have done a thing that caused a bunch of clones to get murdered because he basically allowed them all to be walked into a trap.
And I think this gets like retconned later as like his chip was malfunctioning, and like that's why his worldview was skewed. Like, he saw the Jedi as traitors like too early or something like that. But yeah, initially it was
no one ever talks about Slick. That might have come out of an EU, like an extended, like a comic or a book or something. But within Clone Wars itself,
explanation books or something like that.
Yeah, that would make sense. That is where they try to put little, tape and string explanations in. Is these um encyclopedia things, and then of course they get retconned later too.
Does
But
he get mentioned in the Chips arc? Doesn't somebody bring him up, like Rex or somebody bring him up as like?
I don't think so. I don't remember Slick really ever getting remembered after this episode, because
I
they're
have to
pretty focused
rewatch.
on Tub. But I don't remember Slick specifically getting mentioned. Like, as at most they might have just been like, "Oh, is he betraying us like Slick did, or is this something else?"
Mm.
Or maybe mentioning like this doesn't feel like Slick, because Slick is never like out of his mind the way Tup is. Like Tup is clearly like repeating the same phrase over and over. He's very sick, obviously sick, whereas Slick was always fine. um he's just, angry,
And killing people.
um and choosing to betray people. Yes, I don't think he directly kills anybody, but he does leave a lot of people for dead, essentially. But anyway, the explanation that someone was kind of positing was that, like, towards the beginning of Clone Wars, they were pulling a lot more out of Legends because they were still, I guess, kind of working on some of their world building. And so this might be one of those places where you see Legends kind of peeking in a little bit as maybe the original direction they were going to take. And then, just kind of looking at how the clones maybe were frustrated with their position and turned it on the Jedi, perhaps unfairly, at least to the degree that they chose to take it out on them. And then at some point, they clearly kind of adjusted that perspective and decided to go a different direction, and ended up with the biochip explanation because it allows for the clones to be their own people without the Jedi having to become evil abusers at the same, like it makes sense for both of them, right? They get to be, you know, they get to both make sense within what we know of them, but Order 66 still happens. So that's the obviously big thing that kind of comes in terms of clone world building, is the biochip within Clone Wars, and obviously the continued um, evolution of how independent they are and how much personality the clones do have. Um, and the relationship with the Jedi is expanded to be like they're friends. They're actually really close with each other. The Jedi are shown to encourage that individuality amongst the clones, and this is something recognized not just by the clones and the Jedi, but by antagonists. They that like villains will go like, "My God, it's annoying that the Jedi are teaching the clones to be even more independent and individual and smart." Um, and
And
so this is something
sometimes
that,
they kiss.
right? Fives himself calls the Jedi their best friends during the Chip arc. So this is something that is heavily emphasized over and over, that the Jedi and the clones truly do care and love for each other. And there's obvious, like, Krell and Barriss even kills quite a few clones actually, and I think
Well,
Kit
she kills
Fisto's,
some Jedi too, so it's not personal.
she does kill some. Yeah, the clones are mostly just in her way, but like, but there is a lack of care there shown, right?
Yeah.
That like she treats, like, much like the beginning, like you were saying, that Yoda seems to kind of be a little bit dispassionate about the clones. Barriss is showing a similar dispassion about the clones later, and when she gets her kind of 180 heel turn into a villain. But there is this like evolution of that relationship into something very strongly positive as opposed to something a little bit more distant. And then, of course, we come back to the Mandalorian thing, because this is where Jango Fett is now explicitly said to not be a Mandalorian. It's not even just left ambiguous. We are explicitly told Jango Fett is not Mandalorian. He is probably, presumably, just a bounty hunter who either stole or otherwise illegally obtained Mando armor. Pablo Hidalgo said in 2016 that Jango Fett wasn't a Mandalorian, but that he potentially had claims to have been from Conquer Dawn at some point. Um, However, coming
Wait,
back
I
to the
thought
idea,
it's confirmed that Boba's not Mandalorian. Doesn't
no,
he
it's
have?
Jango.
Doesn't he have the armored chain of command or whatever the fuck chain of
That's in the
custody?
Mandalorian. That's in the Disney era. We're still in Clone Wars era.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said Mandalorian.
No, well, I'm saying the word a lot, but yeah, no, Jango Fett is explicitly said not to be a Mandalorian within the Clone Wars. We're told that that's not what he is.
Which is
And
still very silly. I'm sorry. It's still such a. I understand what they were going for. It is still really silly to be like, hey, the guy who, like, is the father of the guy who inspired all of this and is like the template for every single clone, and then also by extension all of the Mandalorian shit ever. Yeah, he's not Mandalorian. It's dumb. I'm sorry.
It's unrelated.
It's so dumb. They're just like, yeah, he just stole some Mandalorian army. The guy who you created the culture around? That one?
To be fair, Lucas did not create the culture around him.
I understand that.
Someone else did.
But it was created around him regardless. You can't get away from it. The fact that he was he's the guy. Jango and Boba, they're the guys that are on screen in the armor. And then you created everything else based on their cool ass armor. Like, I'm sorry.
I feel like the Star Wars like writers in general are not very good at yes-anding each other.
Like really good at no-butting each other.
Yeah.
Excellent
Lucas,
no-butting.
in particular, was basically, he was like, you're allowed to play in my sandbox all you want, and you can do whatever you want in the sandbox, but my sandcastle is still my sandcastle, and I might take some of your sand into my sandcastle, but I'm not promising to leave it the same.
Yeah.
You know, and like, you know, you can use my characters, you can do whatever you want, and I might steal some of yours, but I am not going to feel obligated to your continuity. I'm not, you know, like, I'm not going to take your shit into account necessarily.
He's like, you can use my Legos, and I might take them back from you, but I'm going to rearrange them when I do it.
And that's just the relationship you have agreed to by coming into the sandbox and playing with my sand and getting paid for it. Agreeing to get paid to play in my sandbox. That is the relationship you are now in. And that's just, everyone agreed to that. And so that is what he chose to do.
I get that, but when it's like, oh, your guy is so cool, I'm going to create a really interesting, cool culture around him. Love that. And then you go, oh, I love that culture. My guy's not part of that culture, though. And you're like, but I made this whole culture for him. And you're like, no, it's not his, though. Like,
he doesn't want it.
It's so funny. It's so weird.
I mean, personally, I think it's hilarious, and I love it. I love that he did that. But
oh, it's iconic. Don't get me wrong. Fucking hilariously iconic. Yeah. So weird.
It's how he did everything, though, right? Like, he was like, oh, I love the name Coruscant as the capital planet in the Republic. No part of Coruscant is going to look at all like Timothy Zahn described it.
Completely different.
It's completely different. He just took the name.
Cool
and
as
the
fuck.
fact that it was a capital.
Completely different.
Yeah, his own design is fine, but like, yeah, he's very into cherry picking, and that is just about how he does. But regardless, this means that the clones no longer connected to the concept of being Mandalorians at all, because Jango is not Mandalorian. That being said, going back to the fact that they were stealing from Legends just a little bit at the beginning of Clone Wars, there are a couple of clones with Mando symbols on their armor that already existed. Most notably, Rex, with the little kind of hawk eyes on his helmet. Oh, yeah. That is a Mandalorian symbol. And one of Obi-Wan's also has like apparently a symbol that's like a Mando ship of some kind or something. Both clones are introduced in Season 1. There's no clone ever given visible Mando connections in Clone Wars as far as I've ever seen. And that is that there are a couple of clones with, like, symbols that you can connect to Mando stuff. Like, it's never connected to Mando stuff in the Clone Wars in the sense that someone goes, hey, Rex, you've got a Mando symbol on your helmet. What does that mean? You know, no one says that out loud, but like, if you were in the know enough, then you could make that connection. So it's odd that like they explicitly tell you in Clone Wars there is no connection between Jango and the Mandalorians. He is not Mandalorian, but the clones already have Mando symbol connections to the Mandalorian identity.
I don't remember if this is like 100% canon or not, but there are those bounty hunters that train the clone troopers. And some of them are Mandalorian.
The Mando trainers specifically that you're talking about, I think, are Legends. In Clone Wars, we're shown bounty hunters that don't appear to be Mandos at all, and we're told that the Jedi hired these bounty hunters to continue like training.
Okay, but in the Clone Wars, this is a Karen Travis thing. Of them. And I thought that it was implied that there was
Clone Wars
we
see like in Clone Wars we see like 2, but we barely see any trainers. It's really only in that Clone Cadets, and there's like 2 trainers in there, and they're not particularly Mando. And I think we're told the Jedi hired these bounty hunters to train the clones, and everything else seems to have been happening via the Kaminoans. the Mandalorian trainers that you're remembering are a Karen Travis thing, to my knowledge. The Kuivaldar.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I think because there's like 100 of them or something like that.
Yeah, he brings like 99 or 100 like old Mando people with him, who
It was in that really
come and
good
help
fic
train.
that I read that I haven't finished yet.
Oh yeah, Kuivaldar are all over. I
I
mean,
got
Cal
further this time.
Skirata.
I got
Yeah,
all the way to Palpatine fighting Obi-Wan on Naboo during a ballroom.
Well, that
sweet.
sounds sick as hell. I love that.
Yeah,
Send it
yeah.
to me.
I'll send it to you. No, you don't want to read it. It's like a million words long.
I don't care.
Okay, I'll send it to you.
It's fine. I'll try. I'll do my best.
Do your best.
Anyway.
I got through an 800,000 one once. That was a good one. Yeah. That was the Boba Din BDSM.
And how was
Genuinely really good. I mean, it has a
Okay.
lot of Jedi critical stuff to it, but the Boba
it?
Din BDSM stuff was really good.
Well written.
Definitely worthwhile. Yeah, yeah, well worth it. I mean, especially since like I think it was written pre the Boba Fett show coming out, and so it didn't take any of that into account. So it was
That's
like
fun.
actually good. And
Damn,
you're
get
like,
'em.
oh yeah, this is exactly what that show should have been. I mean, not that I would have expected the BDSM shit to be in a Disney show, but like anyway, this is so far off the driven path. Anyway, so there is some weirdness to how the early seasons kind of were hinting at that Mando connection, but also explicitly telling us it didn't exist. But like the clones never speak the Mandoa conlang, even though we do hear Satine speak it in Clone Wars, so that was a thing that they knew about and could have pulled from. They never seek out any connection to the Mandalorians when they have the opportunity to do so. There is a couple of moments where theoretically we could have seen clones and Mando characters interacting, and we never do. They don't talk about being Mandalorian, and the canon connection is negligible at best, especially with an explicit declaration that Jango himself was not considered to be Mando. So, like, despite the fact that there is this kind of slight weirdness with these helmet symbols on two of these characters, as far as Clone Wars is concerned, the clones are not Mandalorian. We talked about Slick. Oh, the other thing that I put in here was the 501st. Because this, I think, is also an introduction of the Clone Wars, because the 501st, and again, Faye, I'm going to need you to help me out a little here, but the 501st, to my knowledge, is a thing that was introduced as, like, Anakin's fighters long before they were clones.
So it introduces Vader's fighters. So Vader's
yes, sorry.
Vader's troops in like original lore are called the 501st. The stormtroopers. And then it's retconned to Anakin's clone troopers being the original 501st. And then that just kind of like carries over. Like that's just the name he keeps for his troops.
So is
Right.
it implied that they are the same?
No.
Like the same
So it's
clones?
just
Or he's just like, I'm keeping the name 501st, and this is a new
yeah,
batch
you're
of
just keeping
people.
the name. And like the soldiers switch out the same as they do with the rest of the army.
Yeah, I would assume that
Interesting.
they started as clones, because he does use the 501st to attack the temple. And so I would assume that he
that's right.
keeps that around
Okay.
until they have enough stormtroopers to replicate it, and it just obviously remains the 501st because that's what it's always been. It just stops being all clones after a while.
Yeah.
But this is the first time that Anakin is given a specific battalion within the Clone War, because in Revenge of the Sith, like even though we do see him leading this group with the blue paint into the temple, they're never given a name, and we aren't told that these were like his specific soldiers. So this is the first time that he has that, and they chose to give it the 501st number. The battalion's colors were matched, obviously, to the clones he led into the temple, which adds to that kind of connection that, like, these were his men that he has now personally betrayed and turned into weapons.
That's so sad.
But yeah, so Anakin's connection and relationship with the clones is always a little bit weird within the Clone Wars. They do seem to like and respect him, but he is regularly pretty reckless with them, more than we see other Jedi tend to be. And since he is now explicitly betraying his men who trust and look up to him, it makes sense that Clone Wars kind of builds a relationship that is a little bit more complicated as a result. And so that is another thing that Clone Wars chose to add in terms of clone lore, which leads us into the Disney era. And aside from an unfortunate notable exception, there's not actually a lot of exploration of the clones anymore. They
The
show up a couple
unfortunate
of times.
notable exception being the Bad Batch.
100%. We'll get to that. But essentially, they show up a couple of times as side characters, but they're not usually main characters anymore. The one I wanted to bring up is Sister, who was introduced in I wrote Star Wars Brotherhood, but that is actually incorrect. It was an E.K. Johnston novel. I believe it was like Queen's something or other. I can't remember which one it was. She's got like 50 million Queen books. But it's one of E.K. Johnston's Padme novels. And Sister is actually a trans clone.
Oh my
And so it is the
god.
first time that we get a canonically trans clone.
Hell yeah.
Sister has like, yeah, it was very quickly. She was included in Star Wars Brotherhood, which came out like a month later. The two authors were in conversation with each other about that, and then I believe Sister has showed up in like another one of those, uh, like explanation books or whatever. So she's popped up once or twice, but she is usually a very minimal role. But it is the first canon trans clone thing. But that's kind of where we tend to get most of the exploration of clone stuff is inside things these days. The one place where that is technically not true is in The Bad Batch. However, The Bad Batch is a story that is ostensibly a clone story, except none of the main character clones are actually fucking clones. There is no focus on their identity as clones. There's no real interaction between them and real clones. There's a lot of dislike from these main characters towards the real clones.
They're all super white.
Yeah, we'll get to the racism. But the writing of the way they interact with the identity as clones and their relationship to other clones ends up making this show feel weirdly anti-clone, despite it ostensibly being a clone-centric show. Which to me, I decided, like, so TBB, The Bad Batch, is to clones the way Acolyte and Ahsoka are to Jedi. Which, sorry, Jedi critical fans, that's not going to make any sense to you. But to the pro Jedi fans out there, that's what this is. The main characters to me...
Pause. Do you think any anti-Jedi people listen to us? I'd be shocked.
I said Jedi critical. There are people who love the Jedi, but will sit there and talk about how they...
That's a distinction. You're right.
There is a distinction that I make between anti-Jedi and Jedi critical, and there are Jedi critical fans who do really like the Jedi and tend to interact with them positively, but will sit there and talk about how they made mistakes all the time.
Yeah.
And would not necessarily read Acolyte, and especially Ahsoka, as, you know, Jedi critical or anti-Jedi. Anyway, that is how I feel about The Bad Batch in terms of how they write these characters. I feel like the main characters would have made more sense as, like, a bounty hunter group or even a Mando group of some kind rather than clones.
But then how would they backdoor it into season 7 of the Clone Wars?
It's not like they haven't had groups of bounty hunters on Clone Wars before.
But then how would they have an excuse for them to beat up Rex for no reason? Also, they do this interesting thing in The Bad Batch where they do talk about the chips, but they do this thing where, like, the chips only work for a little bit of the time, or they have to break the conditioning of the chips. It's extremely inconsistent and not great. And then there's also the brief mention of a clone in the Kenobi show, where obviously the Kenobi show is like not supposed to be 100% canon to the main timeline, but there is a brief mention of a clone who is homeless on the streets. He's still in his armor, for heaven's sake, but he's homeless on the streets that Obi-Wan gives money to, and he's not attacking people or anything like that. He's just homeless, begging for money. Like,
yeah, I mean, like, it's unclear how much recognition that clone even has of what's happening to him anymore. He seems very
out of it
in the moment that we get to see him, and he is mostly there just to be like almost another hallucination, even though he does seem to really be there, but just another thing to kind of
I mean, it could be that Obi-Wan is projecting the clone armor onto him in his own imagination.
Yeah, we're not told that that's what's happening, but it is just another moment where Obi-Wan is having to face like a thing from his past coming back to haunt him a little bit, which is what most of that show kind of is.
Disney's really into this thing like, oh, like the chips happen, but like they're inconsistent, and like the clones are being phased out of the army because like they don't really want to deal with the clones anymore. Like they want to make money off of them, but they don't want to have like complicated conversations about like what it means to have enslaved people who have mind control done to them, and then they had to murder all of their close friends.
I do want to jump us back into the racism so that we do address the racism of the Bad Batch because it was horrible.
So bad.
It was really bad. So it technically does start with Clone Wars because the primary voice actor for all of these clones is a white American man whose Maori accent is a little sketchy at best. D. Bradley Baker is actually a very incredible voice actor. Like the work that he does do for the clones, setting aside the racism of his casting, is insane. Like he does incredible amounts of work. But it does still feel relevant to point out the representation problems with the casting since we are bringing it up in the writing and also their designs. So this is not a ding on D. Bradley Baker's capacity as a voice actor, although I don't think his Maori accent is like the best thing in the world. But I think his general voice acting work is off the charts. But so of our, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 main ensemble characters, 3 of them are just 100% white. 3. And keep in mind, these are 6 main characters who are all ostensibly supposed to be Jango Fett clones. So 3 of them are meant to be white, like, or not meant to be, but they are clearly drawn as white. One of them is kind of a lighter brown, but he is based on the actor Sylvester Stallone, who is white. And then one of them is brown, and the last one used to be brown, but is now pale as paper because he's supposed to be kind of like
bleached.
He's been bleached. He's kind of sickly, and so he's lost all of his melanin as a result of physical trauma. So, between those, you have the 3 main characters. They are the special child, the redeemed one, and the smart one. The Sylvester Stallone guy is the leader. The most brown character is either the dumb one or the physically strong one, depending on how they wanted to write him. He's often written very childishly. And then Echo, the one who's used to be brown but is now weirdly pale, is often just kind of tossed into the role of the outsider. So you can see that there's some issues here between how the white characters are getting treated versus the browner clone. And it's not great. Also, the 2 whitest clones have British accents all of a sudden. D. Bradley Baker seems to have chosen to just completely abandon the attempt at Maori and just went for British. And for Omega, who is the child, she obviously has a different voice actor because she is supposed to have a feminine voice, and they did pick someone from New Zealand, but she is of East Asian descent, not Maori descent.
Well,
so
obviously,
she has
if you know how to work computers, you get a British accent over time. That's just you just become C3PO.
Or apparently snipers too, because Crosshair also just has a basic British accent.
Yeah, so the more technological you are, the more British you are.
Yeah. But
that
yeah,
checks
so
out.
that's there as, and I mean, there's so many other knocks I can make. There's some fun ableism stuff happening in this show. There was some anti-Semitism stuff happening in this show. But, that is the main thing that a lot of people tended to bring up was how racist the designs of the characters were. And obviously this started within Clone Wars. There is a lot of things we could say about the designs in Clone Wars of these clone characters and how much they did not look like Temuera Morrison, all the whitewashing that happened to those animated characters, but it just got worse and much more blatant with the Bad Batch, and they never did anything to fix it despite a lot of very vocal pushback.
I mean, it gets to a point where I would rather watch the Book of Boba Fett.
Damn.
The writing for it was also just bad in general.
At least he's still brown in the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, and also he actually starts paler and gets browner because as they kind of heal the scarification that happened from the acid of the Sarlacc, like he actually gets more of his melanin back.
Mm-hmm.
So he gets browner over time as opposed to paler over time. But also
yes, we get to see him fight naked, so that's fun.
We do mostly naked, at least. Yes,
that's true.
But there's no dicks on Disney.
Not allowed.
No dicks allowed.
You gotta use your
Disney.
Imagination.
Yes. But yeah, so there's a little bit of world building regarding their treatment under the Empire. We do see them, as Faye mentioned, getting replaced with stormtroopers within about a year. So they actually don't stick around all that long. It's not like a whole one and done thing where like immediately they're all knocked out and they bring in stormtroopers. It does kind of start more gradually than that, but within about a year, they're almost all phased out. And Camino, which is where the clones are actually created, is completely destroyed, which means there are no more clones ever getting made. There is no capacity for that. Which is why we see a veteran clone being homeless, because they are basically just left out to dry. We also see the beginning of Rex actually starting his own kind of clone rebellion, where he is actively out there trying to help clones escape the Empire as their chips start wearing off. They introduce Senator Ryochuchi, who is in Clone Wars, as someone who decides to help him with this. But there's a lot of questions currently now left unanswered about what the fuck happened here, because when we see Rex next in Rebels, he's got no connection to any kind of rebellion, and there might only be like 3 of them left. We don't really know how and when and why Rex sort of left this rebellion, or if he's just like left it, but it still exists elsewhere without him. We don't know what happened to characters like Echo, who were involved in that rebellion and who is a main character within this show. He's not in Rebels. There's a lot of questions about this sort of narrative that we never get answers to, at least not yet. And then, yes, the biochip has all of its own things. It does seem to have started to fade again after about a year. The clones start feeling regret for what they did to the Jedi, but they don't really seem to entirely understand why they did it. Which means that they're feeling a lot of blame for what they're seeing as their choices. Like, a lot of self-blame for their own choices. Because they're like, well, I did it. Like, I don't know why I did it, but I clearly did it, and I like that I did it. But, you know, like, it's just, there's a lot of confusion happening there. Most of this is seen through Cody, with the one episode that Cody is in, where he kind of is showing some self-reflection happening surrounding his choice to turn on Obi-Wan specifically, presumably. Again, we don't really get a lot of insight into this, but that does seem to be something that's happening. There is a lack of clarity about whether the chip actually even impacted every single clone or not. Whether it was just clones who were near Jedi, or if they had to do it to all of them to enforce loyalty to the Empire. Because there's a character named Hauser who seems to have a certain amount of flexibility about his loyalty to the Empire and his ability to make the choice to turn on them that, like, Ahsoka's, guys did not have. And you could claim maybe that Hauser's chip is starting to fade a little bit, but Hauser didn't have a Jedi near him. There was no Jedi, as far as we know, there was no Jedi on Ryloth for them to murder. And so even if his chip turned on, it may not have, like, super changed his personality all that much. And then the last thing it tells us is that clones with mutations aren't immediately affected by the chip. This seems to account for physical mutations to the brain, as well as genetic mutations that were always there. But some mutations are more immune than others, and the chip can still be activated through head injuries for these clones. So it's still in there, but it just maybe doesn't immediately get activated and can be activated in other ways. So it does still need to be removed, but they get a little bit more flexibility in this. And then, once again, coming back to now the Mandalorian. This is where what Faye was saying, Jango Fett has now been recanonized as a Mandalorian foundling. So he was not born Mando, but he was adopted into it.
Okay.
Seems to be the current explanation, which I believe is how it worked actually in his original backstory as well, that he wasn't born Mando, but he was adopted into it.
But, also there's a whole thing where, like, a lot of Mandalorians are not born Mando. Most of them are, like, fucking foundlings or whatever.
That was, I think, true more in Legends than it currently is.
Sorry. Original shit.
But yes, the original Legends content kind of implied that most Mandalorians were adopted or recruited in, whereas from Clone Wars on, it leans a little bit more genetic.
Weirdly, really similar to the Jedi, actually.
Yeah. At the time, anyway.
It's so funny that it's, like, normal when the Mandalorians do it, but for some reason it's weird when the Jedi do it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Odd.
Fascinating.
I know.
Anyway.
Setting that aside. However, Boba himself, as the only clone we kind of know still alive within this time period, does not actually see himself as Mandalorian. He very explicitly refuses to identify as a Mandalorian, even though he acknowledges that his father was. Or that Jango. And so there is a disconnect still between Jango's identity as a Mandalorian and the clones' identity as a Mandalorian. As far as Disney canon has ever gone, the clones themselves never refer to themselves as Mandalorians. No one else ever tries to refer to them as Mandalorians or show any interest in being considered Mandalorians. But they are technically clones of a Mandalorian person within the Disney era.
Yeah, Bo-Katan seems very offended by the even idea that a clone would be wearing armor.
Yeah, she doesn't like Boba in general, but yes, there does seem to be a clone racism thing happening with Bo-Katan in the Disney era,
Clonism.
which is
Yet
a
another
fun
reason
thing to
for me
add.
to love Bo-Katan.
Yeah. And that seems to be a thing that has lasted for a while because she's nasty towards the clones in Clone Wars season 7, and it seems to have remained racist towards clones as per Mando season 2, which is like what 20, almost 30 years later.
I mean,
Oh my
I
god.
can enjoy
The
her
girl holds a
character
grudge.
without liking her as a person.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think she's a
I wish
character
I
who
could
like is
enjoy her
better.
character.
Yeah. I think she's a character who's better if you let her be more sort of morally ambiguous
Yes.
and really
Oh, for sure.
lean into the moral ambiguity of her. And I don't know that Disney likes doing that as much as I would want them to.
The version of her that exists in my head is cool as fuck.
Yeah. The last thing that they add is the idea, we kind of brushed against this earlier, but that like it seems to be nearly impossible within the Disney era for a force-sensitive person to make a force-sensitive clone of themselves, and it seems to be taking decades of experimentation to figure out how to manage it at all. Which, to Faye's point, apparently is something that was there in Legends and that they are just kind of replicating and redoing within the Disney era, but that is now full canon that
worse.
force sensitivity does not automatically get attached to your clone.
Yeah,
Can be done, but
they were
seems to
trying
require a lot of effort.
They're trying to steal the magic baby for his magic blood. Haha.
They've stolen a lot of magic babies for their magic blood.
Oh my god.
And including one non-magic baby who still had magic blood. Sticky blood, in fact. Thank you, Omega. Yeah,
I have
Omega's
no idea
whole
what you
thing
guys are
is that,
talking
like,
about.
she's not force sensitive, but her blood somehow, if you combine it with a clone, like a regular clone, you can, like, use it to connect the force sensitivity gene to a normal person
What the
via
fuck?
using her blood. That's why I call it sticky blood.
This. Okay.
Because you can, like, use her blood to stick force sensitivity onto somebody else. Seems to be what Bad Batch was
Okay.
going for.
Okay.
That
Can we
reminds
talk about
me-
our favorite clones. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ellie.
No, I was just gonna say that reminds me of Attack on Titan, but I'm not gonna elaborate.
Oh, no, we can't get into that.
We can't get into this.
Okay, what are you guys' favorite clones? Or your favorite scene with a clone in it?
I can go first because mine will be the least interesting.
Sure, go ahead, Nat. Is it
I'd-
Rex? Is it
no.
Cody?
No, but I remember when I rewatched Revenge of the Sith. Yes.
Yes,
Yes, that's the one. Yes, because that's when Order 66 happens, obviously.
it is.
I caught that Obi-Wan calls him Cody for the first time, and that was a very exciting moment for me. You guys are going to have to help me. I don't remember. I watched an arc of a clone whose chip went bad, and he tried to kill Palpatine.
Tup.
Tup.
That feels like too short for that to be his name.
I said
But it's
Fives?
very devastating.
Is it Fives?
It might be Fives. Does he die?
Yes, they both
I think
die,
they kill
but
him.
yes.
Well, it's like a duo arc. Like, they both are involved.
Yeah, well, Tup starts off because his chip goes bad and dies, and then Fives, in the process of trying to figure out what happened to him,
I
actually
think so.
removes his chip, and he goes to
Yes.
try and, like, report it to Palpatine.
Yes,
And
and
then
Palpatine
when
is
he-
voice acted by
Palpatine-
Tim Curry, I believe, in these episodes.
He...
At some
Wild.
point in Clone Wars, it is Tim Curry, and I recognized him because I went, "That's the Rat King from Barbie and the Nutcracker."
His best role.
his most notable role, the Rat King
Obviously.
from Barbie and the Nutcracker. Anyway, I think I cried at the end
But,
of that
yeah.
arc, and I haven't seen that much of the Clone Wars,
That's
so
so sad.
it was really
Fives
sad.
is a solid choice.
I think so. I guess it's Fives based on just that arc, but I'm
Fives,
open.
I think, is, like,
I'm
the
open to all of them.
most fleshed out character, most fleshed out clone character other than Rex.
That
I
makes
would
sense.
argue that I think it would go Rex and then Fives as, like, the clone characters who probably get the most screen time and the most development.
My
Makes
choice
sense.
was Heavy, who ironically is also related to Five, because Heavy is one of Five's like original
Batch squad
brothers.
mates.
Yeah, squad mates in his first squad, the Domino Squad. Heavy's super cool. He sacrificed himself to save everybody, and I love him so much. He's hilarious, and he's like big, but he's still like smart, and I loved him a lot. He was really cool. I was really sad when he died. I cried.
Why do all these characters die? That sucks.
I mean,
Yeah, so I
None of
also
them get
want a
happy
character who
endings.
dies. Although arguably my character is not confirmed to be dead because he just gets led off screen in handcuffs. But I went with Dogma,
knew it.
who is he's in the Umbara arc. He's the guy who's like
He's
very
so
loyal to
cool.
Krell for a solid minute. Well, not a solid minute. He's like most of the arc. But like most of the others don't like him very much. And he's the one whose like whole thing is that he's very loyal to the Jedi as a concept, and as like like he refuses to question them, not because he just believes in rules, but they've been told that the Jedi are these like perfect, wise, omniscient beings, and so he's like, just because we don't understand what the plan is doesn't mean it's a bad one, and we should just trust that this guy knows what he's doing. And of course he's wrong, because Krell is very much trying to sabotage all of them, but it causes him to kind of fight against his own brothers several times, the other people in the battalion in the 501st, because they're all a little bit more capable of recognizing that the Jedi are just people like the rest of us, and they can make mistakes or intentionally do the wrong thing. And Dogma is like arguably the only character who goes through that much of an arc in these couple of episodes, where he has to realize at the end of it that like he was wrong. And unfortunately, he figures this out too late, and he ends up being the one to kill Krell in the end when Rex cannot. That, like, they decide that it is too dangerous to leave Krell alive. They have to kill him for the sake of the mission. But if Rex does so, his life is essentially forfeit, because he does not legally have the right to kill Krell on his own. He doesn't have that authority, and he knows that. And so he hesitates, and Dogma ends up being the one who sees that hesitation and kind of takes the hit. And the last we see of him, he's just sort of being let off in handcuffs, and we never see or hear from him again. But I feel like there's a lot of like really juicy, crunchy bits with Dogma where like he's not super likable. Like they don't like him all that much, because he's very persnickety, and very like into the idea of being a soldier and doing things right, and he's very much a perfectionist. But he also clearly like is just as horrified as the rest of them when they realize they've been accidentally killing their own like other clones, when they're tricked into it. He's just as horrified by this, but he also can and will like set up a firing squad to kill clones that he believes have gone against orders. And so he's just this very kind of like complex, complicated character who exists for like 3 episodes and then he's gone. And I really like him a lot. I think he's very interesting, and he's a character that they could easily kind of choose to run back in something like the Bad Batch, or if they ever go back to the Rex's Rebellion narrative, you could kind of toss him in there too and figure out like, so what did happen to him? Did they just kill him off, or did they kind of like put him in prison and he somehow managed to escape and now he's wandering around again? Like, I'd love to have him back, but I don't think anyone else cares enough about to ever bring him back.
Barriss Offee broke him out of prison, and now they're dating. There you go.
Sure, why not?
Interesting.
That's a crack ship I can get behind. Think he might have some complicated feelings about Jedi after Krell, but
Nah.
Well, yeah,
So
they're
Barriss,
conceptually dating. They never actually see each other. They live on opposite sides of the mountain.
Oh, I see. Okay. The Jedi way to do it.
Angela, do you have a goat fact for us?
I do have a goat fact for you guys, actually. The world's first clone goat was born in May 12th, 1999.
1999!
1999, there were actually 3 of them. They were born in Louisiana. They were
Oh my
created so
God.
they could make magic drug milk.
What are their names? Do you know?
I was gonna say, did they get names?
Millie.
Oh, they were all Millie?
Millie is the only one that they name in this article that I read.
Oh my god. The
Interesting.
goats. Danny, Clint, and Arnold.
I think you actually might be right. I don't know. This article is confusing.
It's fine.
They have like 6 different sources. Anyways, yay, clones!
Our intro and outro music is Mos Eisley Cantina by Speedkicks. Angela and I edit, our artwork is by me, and Sugar is our writer and researcher. You can find us on Instagram and Tumblr at Unleash the Goats. Thanks for listening.